Okay, it looks like we are back. It is saying that I am now live. I am going to double check very quickly on the Facebook page just to make sure, and then we can go from there. Let me just get back here real quick. And we'll see if it's registered my live. No, on my page, y'all. Oh, I think it did. Hold on. Let me look real quick. Ah, there I am. Okay, great. We are live. Let's go. I apologize for the technical difficulties, y'all. Let me get out of here and make sure that I can get into this chat session real quick. Let's look at these comments. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Thank y'all so much for joining me. Hey, y'all. Hey. Once again, I apologize for the technical difficulties, but we're here now, so let's jump right on in to Medical Bondage by Deidre Cooper Owens. So how did y'all enjoy this book? First of all, can everybody hear me okay? Check, check. I'm assuming that y'all can hear me okay. If you can't hear me, please just let me know in the comment section. And if not, we'll just, hey, Lise, hi, Casey. Thank both of y'all for coming and joining me today. I appreciate both of y'all being here. Let me see if I can show it. Look. Ooh, hi. And I'm going to show yours too. Hey. So, we're here. It's Friday. Let's talk about Medical Bondage by Miss Cooper Owens. So, how did y'all like the book? Let me know in the comment section if you want to appear on screen with me as well. I'll see if I can figure it out myself. Oh, Lise says she liked it, but she hasn't finished it yet. That's totally okay, Lise. This is a very dense book. The print, for those of you who have not reached bifocal stage yet, look how tiny that print is. It's about, it's 5 chapters. It's roughly about 5 hours. And it talks about the founding of gynecology and basically medicine in America, and how the experimentation that was done on enslaved women affect all of our medical health now, as far as medical theory, medical practice, all kind of things. So let's get into it, okay? Okay. I will try not to put any spoilers, because I know that some of y'all have not finished the book, but honestly, I don't really think I can spoil this book, even if I did tell you some things. It's just a lot of learning and unlearning. And speaking of which, I really like the fact that Deidre Cooper, I'm going to just call, I think she's a doctor. She's got her doctorate. Dr. Cooper really talks about going into this book trying to dispel the notion of one or the other instead of both. And what I mean by that is how we are talking about the founding of American gynecology. And so people tend to cast Marion J. Sims as either a benevolent guy or a monster experimenting on enslaved women. And what she was trying to get people to understand is that he was doing what everyone else was doing. That was the way society was run. She's not trying to make excuses for him or anything, but really explaining people that it's not that he's either benevolent or he's not benevolent, is that it's more complicated than that. And since she is approaching this text as a historian and not a medical professional, she's having to remember her professionalism when she is talking about these things, which can really be quite contentious. So the first chapter covers the birth of American gynecology. The second one chronicles Black women's experiences in slavery and medicine. The third one is about contested relationships, slavery, sex, and medicine. Because if you've gotten that far into the third chapter, then you'll start to realize that some of the, since a lot of the Black women that were talked about in the book were actually enslaved, they really couldn't consent to anything. And us in our 21st century minds sometimes forget that. There's this one part in the book, I'm jumping around, I'm sorry, but there's this one part in the book where one of the doctors, these are all my notes, y'all, I took lots of notes. One of the doctors is trying to heal a fistula in a woman. And a fistula is like little holes and tears in the vaginal walls that comes from prolonged labor. Oh, let me take your comment off, Lisa. I'm sorry. And so he's trying to repair this fistula. and he of this enslaved woman, and he gets frustrated because after a year or so, he finally gets it cured, and he goes, well, if the darned woman would just stop having sexual relationships, I could have cured her a lot longer. And he's not realizing, bruh, she's enslaved. She doesn't get to consent to anything. You really think that she could say, oh, not tonight, I have a headache? They don't get to do that. And so I really like how she is really having to examine the medical and enslaved records that are left. And you'll notice that I keep saying the words enslaved and not slaves. And the reason why I'm doing this, if you've been in the book club before, we've talked about this. But for those of you who are new, the reason why we do that is because people were not born slaves. They were enslaved. It was something that was done to them. So when you're calling people slaves, you're basically saying they were born to be slaves. That's not true. They were kidnapped from wherever they were, and then they were forced into work camps. That's why I don't call plantations. I call them work camps to really get our minds wrapped around what was going on. And as you can see, even for people during the time that knew what was going on, that cognitive dissonance was so strong, he really thought that an enslaved woman could tell a man, her owner, or any man, and for that matter, that she didn't want to have sex. He thought it was consensual. It was not. Spoiler alert, it was not. The fourth chapter dives into the Irish immigrant women and American gynecology. And that one's really fascinating because it also deals with how when Irish folks first started coming to America, how they were treated very much, they were treated as they weren't white. They weren't white yet. They weren't white when they got here, but then they gained whiteness. And so that's part of the reason why they are in this book in the fifth chapter, is because they were poor and oppressed, and they were also experimented on, and sometimes not with their consent either. But we'll get more into that later. And then the last one is the historical Black superbodies and the medical gaze. That's really, really important because that ties it all together, and it talks about how the way that Black women specifically were treated by these gynecologists affects all of us now. So, like I said, let's dive on in. So let's start off with how Dr. Cooper is talking about her book and how, she writes about dead people or people who have been deceased, and how it got a second life because of a lot of activism that was happening around taking down these Confederate statues and taking down and trying not to honor people who have done atrocious things. So anyway, she's talking about this and talking about the women who are birth advocates, reproductive rights advocates, health and justice advocates, how they're reading her book and really gave it a second life, and how much she really enjoyed that. One thing that really stuck out for me, and I want to read this to get her point across, is, where is it? Okay, so there were a couple of things as a historian that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to focus solely on Sims. That's Marion J. Sims, the father of American gynecology. I didn't want to focus solely on Sims because my book was about the patients, but I recognized Sims would be the hook, so I had to discuss him. The reason why she goes on to say that she didn't want to focus on Sims, because that is taking the activities or the sins of one person and putting it on him, instead of discussing the whole institution of oppression and enslavement and gynecology. So it was not just Marion Sims who had the thoughts of men being at the hierarchy and women being a subset of men, and then Black people even being below that and being intellectually inferior. But also they really thought that Black women had different body parts than white women. I don't want to say different body parts, but because that sounds crude, but that's basically what was going on. And so she talks about how in her book, as a historian, she has to approach it like a historian would. And she is discussing the whole system and not just one man, because as we jump in, we start to talk about different doctors like Francois Marie Provost and Cuvier. And y'all excuse my French pronunciation. I don't speak French. I speak English. And the reason why I'm sitting here speaking to you into unaccented English this day has a lot to do with this book as well. But anyway, she talks about how those men would experiment on the enslaved women, knowing full well that the treatments that they were experimenting on enslaved women with were going to be used on white women and for white women's bodies. So she really talks about that cognitive dissonance that happens a lot. And for folks who maybe haven't gotten that far in the book, or for whom the term cognitive dissonance is new, think of it as a distance between two truths. They have that the truth is staring people in the face, but they have put so much obfuscation and basically lies in their face they can't see it. That is a way that their logic has been detached from their heart. Ooh, that's a good definition. It's not the Webster's definition, but the cognitive dissonance, that's a good way to describe it. Oh, hey, Lise, I'm sorry I didn't see your comment. You're saying it was awful to hear that, the experimentations. So another thing that Diedre Cooper Smith talks about is when she goes around and she's giving these lectures, she often has to correct a lot of medical myths. One of them was that Dr. Sims was doing surgeries on women who without any anesthesia. And that is not a myth. That was actually true. But the reason why that was happening, it was done that way for everybody. Anesthesiology had not been invented then. It was not even a science. They had to have a way when they were cutting on people to know if somebody was bleeding out, or if they were bleeding out, or they were not progressing along medically. And with anesthesia, if they couldn't respond, then they wouldn't know. So all of these surgeries were done without anesthesia back then. So anywho, let me get back to some of these doctors that I found fascinating. Let me find some of my notes. So one of the things, again, that she talks about is in the book too, is some of the medical myths that people were thinking that a lot of these doctors were experimenting on enslaved women and wanting to kind of mangle their bodies. And she points out that enslaved women produced a lot of money for their captors. So they really wouldn't necessarily want to mangle them or do anything that might interfere with their ability to reproduce offspring. Because at this point, and I'm skipping ahead in my notes, but she talks about in here how I have lost my train of thought. She talks about how how much money an enslaved woman could make for her captors, and how women who had high birth rates were often given gifts. Like if they were birthing twins, then the enslaved woman would get, an extra blanket, an extra set of clothes, and just kind of get treated a little bit better because they could produce more offspring, thus enriching their owners. What she also focuses on is that the idea of wealth being tied to your fertility, I believe the word is fecundity, or being able to get pregnant, that was also something that white women had to deal with too. It was a socioeconomic, I think some kind of social power that they also were ascribed to too, being able to produce offspring. So there goes that link again. Even though the cognitive dissonance is saying, Black women are not like white women. They can withstand more pain. They like to have a lot of sex and things like that. What I like about her, I almost want to call her like a medical detective, a historical detective, how she is going through the records and combing through and finding these bits and pieces of information that help to paint a larger story. So let me get back to some of these doctors who are experimenting on enslaved women. They, what is happening is medical experimentation, the producing of medical journals and medicine kind of all form a trifecta of oppression, if you will, that enslaved and poor women are subjected to. And they are able to establish their career and legitimacies from experimenting on enslaved women. Then they get these surgeries down as far as not just fistulas, which again are the vaginal tears, but also uh, becoming proficient in ovarian operations. So maybe somebody has cancer in their ovaries, or it's disease or infected in some sort of way. A couple of other doctors, again, George Cuvier, I think that's how you say it, and Francois Marie Provost. Sorry to that man. They talk about how these two become very well known for, let's see, what was George? It's a medical term. Oh, Ephraim McDowell, who was became the father of ovariotomy. I think that's operating on the ovaries and removing tumors and whatnot. Francois Marie Provost was the father of the C-section. And then what did George do? Oh, how could I forget this? George Cuvier was the doctor that had Sarah Bartman, aka the Venus Hottentot. I am so sorry, Sarah. I don't like referring to her that because that was not her name. That was not who she was about. But he's the one who took her from South Africa and then put her in a menagerie like an animal and exhibited her about and whatnot. So why is it so important that George Cuvier and Francois Marie Provost, I'm just going to stop saying these French names. Why is it so important that they were French? The reason why it was so important that they were French, because, and I'm going to read directly from Dr. Cooper's words, and she's speaking of Provost. He was French born, just like Cuvier, and he goes to France's most valuable, economically worthy colony at that time. It was Haiti, and Haiti's full of what? Black people. And he performed experimental surgeries on enslaved pregnant women to perform C-sections. Of course, many died. Now, this was when he was doing all this. It was in the late 1700s. And so something happened at around 1804. So it made him safe it wasn't safe for that doctor to continue to be in Haiti doing his experimentations. Does anybody know what happened in Haiti in 1804? Anybody? It was the Haitian Revolution. So them Haitians was kicking their enslavers out of the country and probably killing quite a few of them. So he had to get on up out of there. So what does Mr. Man do? So he skedaddles. And guess where he goes? He finds another former French colony. Wonder where he went. Y'all know where he went? Louisiana. So he goes down to Louisiana and he performs the same experimental work on enslaved women until he dies in the antebellum era. So the reason why I'm bringing all of that up is because the type of ideas as far as Black women being able to withstand pain more and being, and I think she quotes it in this book. It's either in this book or some notes because I watched a lot of videos with it. They were talking about how Black women in Africa preferred to sleep with apes. And I know that's a lie. You know that's a lie. More so than they preferred sleeping with Black men. They say stuff like that. So again, that cognitive distance. Remember the disconnection of your brain from your heart? That's not the literal definition. That's the lovely definition, but that's what we're going to call it. The cognitive dissonance was the reason why they were saying that Black women were lecherous. That's not the word. Liked sex a lot. Sorry, I can't think of the word right now. It's because it made it easier for them to rape. And I'm sorry to be so crude and blunt, but that's exactly what was going on. They thought, well, if they want it so bad, they need it so bad, so it's okay that I'm doing this. That's the lie that they told themselves, so that they could rape people in peace. And again, I do apologize. I should put a trigger warning on here. You know what? Let me make y'all a little banner. Let me make you a little banner so that I could be like, hey, we might want to have a bit of a trigger warning on here. I don't know if I can make a banner real fast. That's okay. I can make it. But please note, we might need to think about that. Let me go back and here we go. I'm gonna do the here we go. BRI. Okay. While I'm typing this up, does anybody have any questions or anything? No? Okay, let's do it. All right, let's do that. We're going to do a little scroll, and then we're going to add the banner. And then we're going to hit show. Okay, there. Now everybody knows. All right, so anyway, getting back to Cuvier, or however I say that French man's name. Here we go. So of course we already talked about the anesthesiology and there not being any, because anesthesiology as a science was not even, or had not even been invented yet. Pardon me. I was looking for my other notes, but they're not here. That's okay. I remember them. Another thing that he was talking about in the beginning, I really was fascinated by, back in the day, people did not necessarily have to go to medical school. They could apprentice, like Ephraim McDowell. Sorry, I'm talking really fast. He wanted to become a doctor, so his family said okay, and he started just observing a doctor in town. But him and one of his friends or one of his other students got tired of just observing. They weren't even allowed to talk to the doctor. Hold on. Oh, Lise, thank you. It says, I think they said that lecherous. Thank you, Lise. I thought so. I thought they said lecherous too. And I'm just like, okay, I guess you could say whatever you need to say to sleep at night, but that wasn't true. So anywho, we were just talking about how Ephraim McDowell and his cohorts decided that they no longer wanted to just sit back and watch the doctor, who was the town drunk, do all the work. And they wanted to cut on people and touch people too. And so him and his good buddy got the idea to, they had learned that an enslaved man had died, so they went grave robbing. They dug up a grave and exhumed the man's body, and they performed an autopsy on the cadaver. And so, hold on, let me see. Yeah, and so it was a very small town, and the town folks did not like that, and so they chased him off and all that, and they blamed the town drunk, aka the doctor, but everybody was like, no, he was at the bar getting drunk, like we all know that he does. So anyhow, that was the part about there not being any anesthesia and people just kind of doing what they wanted to because it wasn't very regulated. He gets to go off to Edinburgh in Scotland and learn how to be a better doctor, even though he doesn't finish his course studies. So there's that. But again, like I said, Dr. Smith spent a lot of time correcting medical myths on both sides. And I really, really think that's important for us to remember and talk about, because it is. She had to go through and cull through all these journals and pictures and lithographs and all that. So she wants to get it right, because in doing that, she thinks that she doesn't think, she knows that the racism inherent in the system will be exposed. So I'm going to wrap this up a little bit because I did start late. I do apologize. But the one thing that I wanted to focus on to tie this up, or not tie this up, but to tie it back into how it affects modern medicine and those of us who choose to go the allopathic route and see a doctor, is because a lot of the idea of not believing patients, blaming them for not being able to comply with whatever healing modality you told them to, comes from the literature that people like Sims and Cuvier and Provost were doing. These guys were publishing journals because they wanted to advance American medicine to like where it was in Europe. And so they would do experiments, publish journals, and get money. And in that, when they would say things like, oh, well, Black people can withstand pain longer, or they're being hysterical, they're doing this and this and this, that because those doctors started to get so prominent, because they were doing all these different surgeries that were later going to help heal white women, they were just thought of as unbiased. They were thought of as unbiased. They couldn't have been, of course, putting any kind of their own personal values on what they were writing in those medical journals. And so that's where the medical super bodies, the Black medical super bodies start to come in, and where people, like I keep saying, attribute all these weird falsehoods to Black people and now everybody else. Oh, I won't put this one on the screen. I'll just read it out loud. But Lee says, you're right. Going to male gynecologists has often been humiliating. Exactly. They don't always listen. I've had male gynecologists, and Lisa and I have talked about this before. I've had male gynecologists before, and he was fine, but he was a Black male gynecologist as well. So I'm wondering if that had something to do with it. I'm sure it may have. But when you get in early on the ground floor and you can start establishing, well, these Black patients are lying about this. They don't need pain medicine. They like to have sex a lot, so they're not going to comply with any kind of medical advice you give them anyway, yada, yada, yada. This has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, and you should be concerned about it, whether you're Black or not, because it affects you too. There are a lot of people who still to this day in 2021 think that the reason why Black people don't experience pain as much as other races is because we have thicker skin. Those are lies. Those are lies. It's not true. But when you have lie upon medical lie as your foundation, then of course people are going to believe that. So anyway, this book was very important to help dispel a lot of those types of myths. Let's see what else. There was something else. The one thing that when they were talking about Black people being inferior and experiencing less pain than white people, if that was the case, then why did you have to have your medical team and your medical staff hold them down? Again, no one in that time period was getting any kind of anesthesia. So everybody had people holding them down because, of course, if somebody goes to cut into your stomach, you're going to jerk. So if Black people really were experiencing less pain than everyone, then why did you need to have people hold them down? Another part of the book, I think that is in the next to the last chapter, so that would make it 4. The 4th chapter, they talk about how Marion Sims is trying to cure these fistulas in women, and it stops working and it doesn't work, and people start to get a little bit concerned, and his white medical assistants leave him, and he said he was abandoned. It's in his notes. And so what does he do? Because Marion J. Sims, besides being a doctor, is also a slave owner, and so he has enslaved people. And what he does is he makes them his patients, his medical staff and team, and they help him with surgeries too. So again, the cognitive dissonance was so great that he didn't see how he told on himself. If these people are so stupid, then how are they helping you with surgeries? If they're so dumb, why are you letting them help you with these surgeries that are going to make you famous and make you money? If Black people don't feel pain as much as white people, why do you even need a medical staff to hold these enslaved people down you're experimenting on? Could it be you were lying? Could it be that through experience you knew all that was written in those medical journals wasn't true? I'm banking on that. You knew it wasn't true. You also knew that these people were not stupid, which is why you let them help you. Which is why you made them help you with your surgeries. And you just don't run in and do any surgery. You have to know what's going on, even if you're just helping and holding things and passing things to the person who is doing the surgery. So, Dr. Marion J. Sims, you a lie. Anywho, and the other thing too, when they were talking about in the books how Black women's bodies were different, and specifically Sarah Bartman, how they thought she had a Hottentot hood on her vulva, and they were talking about all that. And I'm going to read this section because they were talking about how Black people are intellectually inferior and all that. But they also thought, like I said, that we had different body parts, or they were bigger, or pause for just a second. The doctors that were involved with Sarah Bartman they were fascinated by her, but also repulsed by her. They were fascinated by her and wanting to touch on her naked body and whatnot. But really, they were fascinated by her behind because it was large. They even gave it a name, a whole medical name for having a big butt. And I'm just like, I guess everybody in my family got that disease, the big butt disease. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't mean to be lewd and rude, but I'm just like, that's not a disease. That's just how she's shaped. And so, so you're constant. Yeah, it's just really weird. We're switching over so that I can remind y'all to sign up for the newsletter. We're in the home stretch. So the same way that they could experiment on Black women's bodies were supposedly inferior, but you knew that they had the same cervixes, the same uteri, the same whatever developed on their body whatever you developed on the enslaved woman's body would be used to fix white women's bodies. So it's kind of interesting that you have this set of ignorant, illiterate Black women, but they were the team that actually helped him to develop the surgical technique that gave him fame. They both can't be true. They both cannot be true. What is true is that a lot of these thoughts about patients not being compliant, about ignoring them, and you're the doctor and you have all the authority, yada, 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 was based on the experimentation of enslaved people, and in this case, enslaved Black women. And that's why you should care, because it's still affecting you to this day. If you have not finished the book, you can check it out on hoopla.com or hoopladigital.com. I highly recommend Hoopla because, like I said, child, I was looking for the notes, the extra notes that was right here up under those. I don't know what I didn't see. Let me go through and make sure that I got everything. I recommend that you go to hoopladigital.com and check out the audio version of this book. There are also some supplemental resources that I gave to everyone who has signed up for my newsletter. So I highly recommend that you do that as well. There is a podcast interview with Dr. Cooper. There's also a YouTube interview with Kimberly Nicole Foster of For Harriet. And she does a really good interview of Dr. Cooper where she breaks this down and explains things. We also have information on reproductive rights activists and whatnot. I'll post all of this before 6 today. But like I said, if you sign up to my newsletter, you will get this really, really early. You'll get it at the beginning of the month so that you won't have to wait for me to post it on Facebook. It will already be yours. I appreciate everyone who was able to read the book and participate. And even if you didn't finish it, I do appreciate you giving me a bit of your time and coming to the live stream. For those of you who are watching the replay, I didn't forget about y'all. Hey, replay viewers, I love you too. So happy to have all of y'all here. Please come back next month when we will be discussing Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. I almost forgot his name. Did y'all see that? Matt Ruff is going to be our book for April. It is Lovecraft Country. The library does have several copies of that book. I believe we have about 8 or 9 of it physically. It's also available as an ebook. We have an audio book as well. You have to be able to play CD players for that though. So you have to be able to play CD players. That's not how that's supposed to go. You have to have something that plays CD to get the audio book because we only have it on discs. That book is phenomenal. It actually ties into medical racism and experimentation. Also, we just ordered, and by we, I mean the library, we just ordered the HBO series, Lovecraft Country as well. And so I don't know when those discs will get here, but if you don't have HBO Max, then you can just watch the DVDs that the library will be bringing in as well. I recommend doing both because the book differs from the movie, and there are reasons why. And it really is a wonderful book, a wonderful mini series as well. I hope that y'all join me for that, and we can chit chat and discuss about those things as well too. Remember as well, we are constantly having a lot of different weekly crafts and snack bags for children 0 to 18. So stop by your local branch and ask about the kits to go and a snack bag for a young person in your life. We also have adult crafts as well. Visit the library's website at pueblolibrary.com so that you can check out which branches are doing what. You can attend as many programs as you want, the more the merrier. You can even print off a little brochure of the programs that you want to attend so that you can stay focused and remember the programs that look interesting to you. I think that's it. I hope that y'all have a wonderful weekend. I hope that everyone is doing their best, staying safe, remembering to wear their masks. I'm putting mine back on. And also, if you are in the eligible category, I hope that y'all are signing up and getting your vaccine. Please remember to do that. Do it in the morning. If you're having a hard time getting an appointment, wake up early in the morning and do it. I'll put some links on the Facebook page too, so you can hopefully find somewhere if that is an issue for you. Again, thank you all so much. Hi, Lise. Thank you. Oh, yes. Let me put this up here. Lise was talking about how they knew we were all the same. You probably made that comment when I was talking about the experimentation that they were doing and, doing it on Black women and trying to pretend like it wouldn't work on white women. Of course, why wouldn't it work? We got the same body parts, even though they tried to pretend that we don't. All right. Thank you so much again for joining. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate your time. I will see you here next month. I'll see you a whole bunch throughout April. Just come back to the page, check out what I'm posting. Remember to sign up for the newsletter so that when I send out all these extra resources, you get it too. And you could be part of the cool kid crowd. Okay? Okay. Bye.